Lionel Messi is mourning one of the most painful losses of his life after his father, Jorge Messi, died at the age of 68 following a prolonged illness. The news was confirmed this weekend, sending shockwaves through the football world and leaving Messi's family, teammates, former clubs, and millions of supporters grieving. Jorge died on Friday night, August 7, 2026, at a medical clinic, according to multiple reports. His family had previously revealed that he was dealing with an illness, but had deliberately kept the details private, asking the public and media to respect their family's privacy during an extremely difficult period. The tragedy comes at a deeply emotional moment for Lionel Messi, who is now 39 years old and has spent virtually his entire life under the spotlight. For football fans, Messi is the legendary number 10, the World Cup champion, the 8-time Ballon d'Or winner, and one of the greatest players the sport has ever seen. But behind all of those achievements was a father who played an enormous role in helping him reach the professional level. Jorge was not only Lionel's father, but also his longtime representative and one of the people closest to him throughout his extraordinary career. Jorge Messi's death was especially painful because his relationship with Lionel went back to the very beginning of the football superstar's story. Lionel was born on June 24, 1987, in Rosario, Argentina, into a close-knit family where football quickly became an important part of his childhood. Jorge helped coach his son when Lionel was a young boy, and he remained involved as Lionel progressed through local football and eventually joined Newell Old Boys. Long before the giant stadiums, enormous contracts, and international fame, Jorge was one of the people helping a gifted little boy chase a dream that seemed almost impossible. When Lionel was only 13, that dream took the family across the Atlantic. Barcelona offered Messi the opportunity to continue his development in Spain, and the move became one of the most important turning points in football history. Leaving Argentina at such a young age was an enormous decision, but Jorge remained a central figure as Lionel began adapting to a completely new country and football environment. What followed was an extraordinary transformation, with Messi developing through Barcelona's youth system before eventually becoming the club's greatest ever player and one of the most recognizable athletes on earth. Jorge's influence did not stop once Lionel became a professional footballer. He became his son's longtime agent and representative, helping manage the business and professional side of a career that eventually involved some of the biggest clubs, contracts, and endorsements in world sport. While Lionel was the one scoring goals and lifting trophies in front of millions of people, Jorge was frequently working away from the spotlight, helping navigate the complicated world surrounding his son's career. His presence became a constant part of Messi's journey from teenage prospect to global superstar. The family had already faced growing concern about Jorge's health before his death. Earlier this year, reports began circulating about his condition, but the Messi family pushed back against speculation and emphasized that his medical situation was private. The family's approach was clear. They wanted accurate information to come from those closest to Jorge rather than from rumors circulating online. That request for privacy is particularly important now because details about his exact illness remain limited and reports have differed over the precise nature of his health battle. As Jorge's condition became a private family matter, Lionel continued his professional commitments while dealing with the emotional weight away from the cameras. That makes some of Messi's emotional moments earlier this year particularly poignant in retrospect. Fans had already seen just how deeply family affects Lionel, and the latest tragedy has now made the importance of those relationships even clearer. Messi has always maintained a strong connection to Rosario and to the people who were part of his life before global fame changed everything. Following Jorge's death, Lionel Messi immediately returned to Argentina to be with his family. He traveled back to Rosario, the city where he was born and where his football journey began, to say goodbye to his father. The funeral was held privately in nearby Paris, reflecting the family's repeated desire for privacy. Messi was accompanied by his wife, Antonella Rocuzzo, and their three sons, Tiago, Matteo, and Ciro, while several people from his football circle also offered support during the difficult moment. The images surrounding Messi's return to Rosario carried an emotional significance that went far beyond football. This was the city where Jorge had helped raise him, the place where Lionel first learned to love the game, and the place connected to so many memories before his life became an international spectacle. After spending decades traveling around the world for football, Messi was returning home for perhaps the most personal reason imaginable. He was coming back to say goodbye to the father who had been there long before the world knew his name. Outside the cemetery, supporters gathered to show their respect. Fans brought flowers and left emotional messages for Lionel and his family, with some messages encouraging Messi to stay strong during the loss. The scenes demonstrated just how much Jorge's story had become connected to Lionel's story. Supporters who had watched Messi grow from a teenage phenomenon into a football legend now wanted to show that they understood the human being behind the superstar image. The football community also moved quickly to support Jorge. Inter Miami paid tribute to Jorge following his death, while Messi was absent from the club's match because he had returned to Argentina to mourn with his family. The response from the club and supporters was a reminder that despite the enormous commercial and sporting demands surrounding Messi, there are moments when football simply has to come second. One of the most touching moments came from Rodrigo de Paul, Messi's Argentina teammate and close friend. During Inter Miami's match, de Paul celebrated a goal with a tribute to Messi, revealing a number 10 shirt underneath his own jersey. The gesture immediately attracted attention because the number 10 has become inseparable from Lionel Messi's identity. In that moment, however, it represented something more personal, a message of solidarity for a teammate and friend who was going through one of the hardest moments of his life. Other members of Messi's football family also expressed their support. Teammates and friends from his years with Argentina and Barcelona joined fans in mourning Jorge, while Newell's Old Boys, the Rosario club connected to Messi's childhood, also remembered the man who had played such an important role in the early stages of Lionel's life. For a footballer whose identity remains deeply connected to his hometown, the support from Rosario carried a particularly powerful meaning. Barcelona's connection to Jorge is also impossible to ignore. Jorge was there when the family made the enormous decision to send Lionel to Spain as a teenager, and Barcelona ultimately became the place where the young Argentine developed into one of the greatest footballers in history. Lionel would spend more than 2 decades associated with the club, winning league titles, Champions League trophies, and individual honors, while becoming the face of an entire era of football. Jorge was part of that journey from its earliest stages. For Messi supporters, it is impossible to separate Lionel's achievements from the sacrifices made by the people around him. Becoming a professional footballer at the highest level requires extraordinary commitment from the player, but it also requires family support, difficult decisions, and countless moments that never make the headlines. Jorge was there during those early years when Lionel was still a child with an extraordinary gift, and he remained involved as that gift eventually became a global phenomenon. Jorge also witnessed some of the greatest moments in his son's career. He saw Lionel become Barcelona's record-breaking superstar, watched him win individual awards that seemed impossible to accumulate, and witnessed the emotional journey with Argentina that eventually culminated in the 2022 World Cup. For years, Messi had carried the enormous pressure of winning football's biggest international prize, and when he finally lifted the World Cup in Qatar, Jorge was able to witness his son achieve the dream that had defined so much of his career. That World Cup victory now feels even more significant when viewed through the story of father and son. Lionel had experienced years of criticism, disappointment, and heartbreaking defeats with Argentina, but Jorge remained one of the people who had seen the journey from its very beginning. He had watched his son leave Rosario as a teenager, build a legendary career in Spain, become Argentina's captain, and eventually lift the World Cup. Few people could understand Lionel's entire journey better than the father who had been beside him from childhood. Jorge's life was therefore closely connected to one of the most remarkable sporting stories ever told. But to Lionel, he was not a statistic, an agent, or a football executive. He was his father. That distinction matters now, because the world is used to seeing Messi as almost superhuman on a football field. He has spent his career performing under pressure in front of enormous crowds. But grief is something completely different. It is personal, private, and impossible to overcome with talent or determination. The latest reports indicate that Jorge's funeral was intentionally kept private, and that decision deserves to be respected. The Messi family had already asked for privacy during Jorge's illness, and they have continued to handle his final farewell away from the public spotlight. Even though fans naturally want to know more, the family's wishes are clear. This is a moment for Lionel, Antonella, his children, and his wider family to grieve, rather than a moment for speculation about private medical details. There has also been considerable discussion online about Jorge's illness, but the responsible approach is to avoid presenting unconfirmed medical claims as fact. Public reporting has described his condition as a prolonged or undisclosed illness, while the family has not publicly provided a detailed diagnosis. That means any specific claims circulating on social media should be treated cautiously unless they are confirmed by the family or a reliable source. What is clear is that Jorge had been dealing with a serious health problem and that his death came after that prolonged period of illness. For Lionel Messi, the loss also comes during an important stage of his career. Even at 39, he remains one of the biggest names in football and continues to attract enormous attention every time he steps onto a pitch. But following the death of his father, football naturally becomes secondary. Messi missed Inter Miami's match as he traveled to Argentina, choosing to be with his family instead of continuing with his professional schedule. That decision speaks for itself. Fans have responded with an unusual level of unity. Football is normally filled with rivalries, arguments, and endless debates about which player is the greatest, but Jorge Messi's death has largely pushed those arguments aside. Supporters from different clubs and different countries have been sharing messages of sympathy for Lionel and his family. Even communities known for football rivalry have recognized that the death of a parent is not a sporting event and should never become a source of mockery. That reaction says something about the relationship millions of people have developed with Messi over the years. They may never have met him, but they watched him grow up through television screens. They watched the teenager at Barcelona become a superstar. They watched the heartbreak with Argentina, the triumphs with Barcelona, the move to Paris Saint-Germain, the arrival at Inter Miami, and ultimately the World Cup victory. And throughout much of that journey, Jorge Messi remains part of the story. There is something deeply emotional about the fact that Lionel has now returned to the same region where his story began to say goodbye to his father. Rosario represents the beginning of everything for Messi. It represents his childhood, his family, his first football experiences, and the dreams that eventually took him to Europe. Jorge was part of those earliest memories, and now the city has become the place where Lionel is mourning him. The football world will eventually move forward. Inter Miami will play more matches. Argentina will prepare for more competitions. Messi will eventually return to the pitch when he feels ready. Fans will once again talk about goals, assists, trophies, and records. But for the Messi family, life has changed in a way that cannot be measured by football statistics. Jorge Messi leaves behind a legacy that is inseparable from his son's extraordinary career. He was the father who supported a young footballer from Rosario, the representative who helped guide a global superstar, and the family figure who remains connected to Lionel through decades of fame. His name may not appear beside every trophy Lionel won, but his influence is part of the story behind those achievements. Lionel Messi's career has always been described through numbers: hundreds of goals, countless assists, major trophies, 8 Ballon d'Or awards, and a World Cup. But Jorge Messi's contribution cannot be measured that way. It belongs to the years before the statistics, before the records, and before the world was watching. It belongs to the family moments that helped create the person who eventually became Lionel Messi. And perhaps that is why this loss has touched so many people around the world. Fans are not simply mourning the father of a football superstar. They are recognizing the human story behind one of the greatest sporting careers ever created. Jorge helped his son chase a dream, and that dream eventually became something that inspired hundreds of millions of people. Now, Lionel is facing the kind of moment no footballer can prepare for. The stadiums will wait, the trophies will wait, the cameras will wait. For now, there is only family, memories, and grief. Messi has spent his entire life being expected to find solutions on a football pitch, but there is no solution for losing a parent. There is only time, family, and the memories of everything they shared. Jorge Messi was 68 years old when he died, and his passing marks an important chapter in Lionel Messi's personal story. From Rosario to Barcelona, from a childhood football field to the World Cup stage, Jorge was connected to the journey in ways that went far beyond football. Now, as Lionel says goodbye to his father, supporters around the world are giving him the same message. Take your time, stay close to your family, and know that millions of people are thinking of you. For a man who spent decades watching his son make history, Jorge Messi's greatest legacy may ultimately be the person Lionel became away from the football pitch: a son, a husband, a father, and a family man who has repeatedly shown how important his loved ones are to him. That part of Lionel's identity existed long before the fame, and Jorge was there to see it. The world will remember Jorge Messi as the father and longtime representative of Lionel Messi, but to Lionel, he was simply dad, and that is the part of the story that matters most. The football world can celebrate Jorge's role in helping produce one of the greatest players ever, but the Messi family is now dealing with something much more personal: saying goodbye to someone who had been there from the very beginning. As Lionel returns to his professional life whenever he feels ready, every goal, every match, and every moment on the pitch may carry a different emotional weight. His father's presence will no longer be there in the same way, but the memories of their journey together will remain. From a small boy playing football in Rosario to a World Cup champion celebrated across the planet, Lionel Messi's journey was shaped by many people, and Jorge Messi was one of the most important. The football world can only offer condolences and support now. Jorge Messi's family has asked for privacy, and that request should remain at the center of the conversation. The most meaningful tribute is not speculation about his final days, but recognition of the life he lived, the family he built, and the extraordinary journey he shared with his son. Lionel Messi has spent more than 2 decades giving football fans unforgettable memories. Now, in one of the most difficult moments of his life, those same fans are showing that the relationship can go beyond goals and trophies. They are standing behind him as a grieving son, not simply as the world's most famous number 10. Jorge Messi's story is now part of football history, but his greatest story was always the one that began in Rosario with a little boy who loved football. He supported that boy, helped guide him through extraordinary challenges, and watched him become a legend. And although the world knows Lionel Messi for everything he achieved on the field, behind that legend was a father who helped him take the first steps. May Jorge Messi rest in peace, and may Lionel Messi, Antonella Rochelzo, their children, and the entire Messi family find strength during this heartbreaking time. For now, football can wait. Family comes first, and the world is giving Lionel Messi the space he needs to say goodbye to his father. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more celebrity and sports updates just like this.